Walter's Sports Bar is a great place for the family to grab a bite to eat before going into the ballpark. $5 kids meals from 4 to 7 p.m. with the purchase of an adult meal. Walter's is located across the street from Nationals Park.
Now at McDonald's, a sausage McMuffin is only $1.50. So stop dreaming about breakfast sausage and go get it. Get more value on the under $3 menu.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Lopez sets fires. Swing a blast. Deep left center field. Way back it goes toward the bullpen and it is gone. It almost knocked down the back wall of the bullpen. An impressive line drive home run for James Wood, his 8th of the season, and the Nationals lead it 4-1. He absolutely tattooed that ball. The 1-0 to Meade. Swing a long drive, left field, down the line. If it's fair, it's gone. And it is fair. 3-run homer for Curtis Meade, and the Nationals lead it 11-4. Now on a long, soaring drive deep into the night in section 106. Curtis Meade, with his 3rd homer of the year, applies the knockout blow to the Braves here in the 8th.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at Nationals Park, where we may have just had the best offensive performance yet from the 2026 Nats. An 11-4 win over the Atlanta Braves at Nationals Park on Tuesday evening. In Game 2 of a 4-game series, snapping the Braves' 6-game winning streak, the Nats in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 11-13. The Braves now are a National League East best 16-8, and the Nats offense in this game was outstanding. 11 runs, 10 hits, which were 2 homers, a double, and 7 singles, a whopping 12 walks, 5 for 20 with runners in scoring position. The 12 walks are tied for the second most walks by the Nats in a regular season game since the franchise moved to Washington, D.C. This installment of Nats Chat is brought to us by the Golf Yards in Ballston, the DMV's new home for elite indoor golf training. The Nats season is just getting going, so is the DMV's golf season. Make sure that your swing is ready too. Visit thegolfyards.com to secure your spot. Coming up later in the show, an update on the Nats AA affiliate, the Harrisburg Senators, from the voice of the Senators, Frankie Vernouski. Nats starting pitcher Foster Griffin, he on Tuesday evening lasted for 6 innings. Man, did the Nats need that. But of course, the story of this game, the offense, which continues to be shockingly good in this season number 1 of a restarted rebuild. Mark, the Nats over 24 games have scored 136 runs, 5.67 runs per game, 11 more runs on Tuesday evening, and the 12 walks. Wow, what a showing.
You know, they scored 11 runs in this game, Al. They easily could have scored 15, 16, 17 runs. They left a lot of guys on base, and really it wasn't until the final 2 innings that they put a stamp on it. This game was still in doubt up until then because they actually did squander several opportunities to just put the game away early on. So it shows you how they had that patient approach right from the start, and they kept it going all along. First time they had drawn 10 walks in a game since late in the 2020 season. So this is the first time since the rebuild, let's say, since the first rebuild began, that they've walked 10 times in a game, and then they added a couple more to get to 12. You saw James Wood show incredible patience and do damage on the one pitch he got a chance to get a hit off of. You saw Luis Garcia have a 4-hit, 4 RBI night, batting right behind Wood, so taking advantage of all those base runners that he had. And really just across the board, almost everybody had some kind of productive plate appearance in the course of the game. And that was nice to see, especially against a good team like the Braves. And I'm just glad in the end that they did finally tack on there at the end, because it did feel like they were teetering for a long way, that it might have come back to haunt them, all those missed opportunities early. Thankfully, that's not the story we're talking about at the end of the night.
Well, as we know, you never know with this Nats pitching staff. But yeah, this game did end up becoming a blowout. The Nats in this game, 3 runs, bottom of the first, a run, bottom of the second, run, bottom of the fifth, 3 runs in the bottom of the seventh, and 3 runs in the bottom of the eighth. The stat of the game, though, how about this? And this is one of these things that you just shake your head at when you see. So the Braves in this game used 6 pitchers. The 6 pitchers combined to throw 201 pitches over just 8 innings. We only had 8 innings of Braves pitching in this game. 201 pitches. That was, dare I say, Nationals-like, what we had from the Braves pitching staff. But that was something. 201 pitches from Braves pitchers over just 8 innings.
It was 117 through 4 innings. That's how ridiculous it was. And they made Reynaldo Lopez. He threw 46 pitches in the first inning. This is a guy who missed most of last season after shoulder surgery. When do you ever see a pitcher be allowed to go 46 pitches in general in a first inning without being pulled, let alone a guy who's missed most of the previous season with an arm injury? They brought him back out for the second. Wood immediately hits a home run. Garcia singles, and that's the end of his night. And it just kept going on and on from there. They stuck with the approach. The Braves had a bad night from a pitching standpoint, but credit to the Nationals. There were a couple of at-bats during the game where they got, were chasing at some stuff out of the zone. But for the most part, they stayed patient. They let the Braves pitching staff beat themselves. And then ultimately they did convert enough of the big hits when they needed them. But that's the kind of game, and we'll see the rest of the series, but that's the kind of approach that can have an impact the day after. And there's still 2 games to go in this series because of how much the Braves had to use their bullpen. And it wasn't their top arms, but they had to throw a lot in this game. And let's see, there could be ramifications from that the day after or even 2 days after.
Yeah, Reynaldo Lopez, of course, the former Nats prospect. He in this game officially allowed 4 runs in 1 inning, faced 11 batters, got just 3 outs, gave up a homer, 4 singles, and 3 walks. In terms of offensive standouts for the Nats in this game, James Wood, Curtis Mead, and Luis Garcia Jr. Wood got on base 5 times. He is the Nats starting right fielder and number 1 batter, went 1 for 2 with a solo homer and 4 walks, so one of which was intentional. Wood in the Nats 1-run second had a leadoff full count opposite field homer to left center field for a 4-1 Nats lead. The homer going a projected 412 feet per Statcast. Curtis Mead, he came off the bench to serve as the Nats DH, went 1 for 2 with a 3-run homer and a walk. Mead in the Nats 3-run 8th, a 1-out 3-run homer to left field for an 11-4 Nats lead. And Luis Garcia Jr., as mentioned, a 4-hit game. He is the Nats starting first baseman and number 2 batter, 4 for 5 with a 2-run double, an RBI single, and 2 other singles. And he had a stolen base. So Garcia in the Nats 1-run 5th, a 2-out opposite field RBI single to left center on a 1-2 pitch for a 5-3 Nats lead. Garcia in the Nats 3-run 7th, a 1-out first pitch, bases loaded 2-run double to the right center field gap for a 7-3 Nats lead. So I think we all get it that it's entirely possible that at some point there is regression with the Nats offense. At some point, the carriage turns back into a pumpkin. But, I've been thinking about this offense and comparing it to what we had last season. And we remember last season, there were games in which the Nats offense looked great. But there were so many games in which the Nats offense did not look good. And what we would get would be like a great offensive game and then like 2 or 3 bad offensive games. And then a great offensive game and we'd be like, wow, this offense is capable of actually being pretty good. And then, 2 or 3 more bad offensive games. With this team, there have been a few bad offensive games here and there, but by and large, the consistent theme has been good offense. Like every team, even teams with great offenses, you're going to have a few bad games. You're going to have the occasional bad game. There have been a few bad games with this offense, but the consistency of this offense has been remarkable. And, again, with that caveat of maybe it all comes crashing back down to earth, 24 games into this thing, this offense is performing at a high level.
Yeah, and think back how many times last year or the last several years did they have a night where we're saying they let the opposing starter, go 7 innings on 75 pitches or something like that. And we haven't had anything even remotely resembling that, I feel like, this year, even if they haven't scored a ton of runs. And they have, for the most part, most nights. But even on the nights where they're not scoring, they are making the pitchers work. And so I think the biggest difference so far to me this year is just plate discipline. Swinging at the right pitches, taking the pitches that you should be taking. And you're seeing that across the board. It makes a big difference. And that's been very refreshing to see. It's not always the easiest thing to teach guys to improve upon, especially once you're already in the big leagues. That's really nice to see. I couldn't help but think to myself, watching this game from the opposing dugout was Darnell Coles. He's the Braves' assistant hitting coach now. Now, they've got the best lineup in baseball, have scored the most runs in baseball. He's doing just fine over there as the assistant. But I wondered what was going through his mind watching this team that he coached the last 3-4 years and seeing this kind of approach from them and this kind of production from him. I wonder if he was thinking, man, how come they couldn't do that, when I was here? Or what are they learning that I couldn't teach them? Or, who knows what was going through his head? But it has been a consistent theme for the most part through 24 games this year.
Yeah, what were Nats players thinking looking at Coles? And were perhaps some Nats players saying, how come you didn't coach us the way these guys are coaching us? I mean, the process when it comes to the offense, I don't know how you argue with these results. And it's been so pleasant to watch. These Nats games have been wildly entertaining, right? In large part because of the pitching staff. But the offense, of course, has been a huge component in that too. And, you go into these games with almost an anticipation now of, hey, this team is more than capable of putting up 5, 6, 7 runs, no matter the opposition. This is one of the best teams in MLB so far. Atlanta and the Nats on Tuesday evening scoring 11 runs and ended up authoring a blowout.
The Nats season is officially underway, and that means the outdoor golf season here in the DMV is just kicking off too. But let me ask you this. Is your swing actually ready for the course, or are you still knocking off the winter rust? If you are tired of losing strokes earlier in the year, you need to check out the Golf Yards. They're opening the most advanced indoor golf performance club in the DMV right here in Ballston, located directly off I-66. This isn't just another simulator bar. It's a true 24/7 training facility featuring the best tech in the game. Tour-grade TrackMan simulators, well-putt putting technology, techno gym and Oxford strength training used by Olympians and PGA Tour pros, and a one-of-a-kind short game area with a real sand trap. It's the perfect place to fix your slice, work on your short game, or just escape the unpredictable spring weather. Doors are opening this May, but founding memberships are going fast. They are building an incredible community of golf enthusiasts in the DMV and want you to be part of it. Go to thegolfyards.com right now to lock in your founding membership and get your swing dialed in. That's thegolfyards.com.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
We've all been there. You're away for the weekend, the big game is on, and you realize you're restricted from watching. Or maybe you're trying to check the latest lines on your betting app, but your local network is blocking the site. These are the ultimate unforced errors. You can prevent this from happening to you with IPVanish. IPVanish is the powerhouse VPN designed to keep you in the game no matter where you are. IPVanish helps you stay connected to your favorite team and streaming services while you travel. But it's not just about watching the game. For the bettors out there, IPVanish provides an extra layer of security and privacy that helps you access your account safely on public Wi-Fi. Plus, IPVanish is lightning fast, so you won't have to worry about lag during those crucial live betting moments. Right now, get a massive discount at IPVanish.com. That's IPVANISH.com to get started today. Secure your play and go to IPVanish.com.
Here's the set by Griffin. The 0-1 swung on, slow ground ball to the left side. Nunez to his left, gets to it, and throws a dart to Garcia, and the inning is over. Foster Griffin becomes the Nationals' second pitcher to complete 6 innings as he gets Dubon to ground out to the second baseman, and the inning over.
So the Nats starting pitcher in this 11-4 win over the Braves at Nationals Park on Tuesday evening was Foster Griffin. He was not great, but he lasted for 6 innings. And with the lack of innings from Nats starting pitchers so far this regular season, and with the team in the midst of 17 consecutive days without a scheduled off day, you celebrate Foster Griffin going 6 innings. And how he got to 6 innings especially stood out. He allowed 3 runs in 6 innings. He gave up 5 hits, 4 of which were extra base hits. He gave up 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and a single. He issued a walk. He recorded 3 strikeouts. He threw a lot of strikes, 96 pitches, 65 strikes, 31 balls. Top of the second, he allowed a run on back-to-back 2-out doubles. Top of the third, he allowed a run as he gave up a 2-out solo homer by Drake Baldwin to right center on an 0-2 pitch to cut the Nats lead to 4-2. The homer went a projected 438 feet per Statcast. Griffin in the top of the 5th allowed a run as he gave up a 1-out opposite field solo homer by Eli White to right field to cut the Nats lead to 4-3. Blake Butera with 2 outs in the top of the 6th went out to the mound, but he ended up leaving Griffin in the game, despite the next batter, the right-handed hitting Mauricio Dubon, having gone 2 for 2 versus the lefty Griffin. But Griffin induced a groundout by Dubon to end the top of the 6th and complete 6 innings. And it was interesting to hear how Blake Butera talked about this during his post-game press conference. We know that Butera, with the Nats' new analytics-based process, has been really aggressive in pulling Nats starting pitchers from games. He, in this instance, gave some leash to Griffin, and it sounded like the plan was to give the leash to Griffin, that Butera went out there just to make sure that Griffin was okay.
Just wanted to talk to him, see where he was at, made sure he was in a good spot. Obviously, his pitch count was up there.
This was not what I think some people thought it maybe was, which was like Griffin convincing Butera to go against the analytics and keep Griffin in the game. It sounded like Butera wanted to keep Griffin in the game, and Griffin rewarded Butera's desire.
I don't know. It kind of sounded to me like Blake Butera listened to Nats Chat earlier in the day or read Nats Journal and heard my thoughts on this subject, because it was very much different from what we saw the night before. I was watching this in the press box, and I'm going to admit I enjoyed that moment quite a bit, because it was kind of what I was talking about the previous night. Yeah, look, he walked out there essentially thinking to himself, I want to give him another shot to face another batter, but I need to see from him and hear from him that he is good to do that. And if Griffin had given any hesitation to that question, then he probably would have made the move and gone to the bullpen at that point. Foster Griffin said after he walked Austin Riley, he kind of put his head down, he turned his back. Next thing you know, he sees the manager coming out of the dugout. He assumed that Butera had already signaled for the bullpen. So he never saw this coming. He just thought he was out of the game. And if you watch it again, you can kind of see he's got that look in his eye, and he's like ready to hand the ball over to Butera. And then there's this moment where his expression changes completely. And Butera asked him, hey, how you feeling? He said, I'm good. And he said, do you want to get one more batter? And he said, yeah. You can see him say yes. And like his whole attitude in that moment like perked up, where I thought, okay, wait, I actually am going to be given the opportunity to do this. Let's go do this. James Wood said he had jogged over to center field thinking he's going to be hanging out with Jacob Young for a pitching change. And Young said to him, hey, turn around, go back. And he's like, what happened? So I think everybody just assumed that pitching change was happening. Blake Butera had other things in mind. Good for him for giving Griffin the opportunity. Good for Griffin for making the most of it. Now he's facing Mauricio Dubon, who was 2 for 2 against him. So that's another reason that Griffin assumed that he was done. But he went into that final at bat and said, okay, I know how he beat me the first couple of times. I'm going to try to give him something different that he's not expecting this time around. Got him to hit the ground ball, gets out of the inning, becomes only the second national starter to go 6 innings this year. And as he said, he wanted to do that just to give a little bit of a breather to the guys in the bullpen. Even if it's just one batter, 1 out, he felt like that made a difference. They've had to take up so much of the workload themselves. He wanted to do his part. I loved everything about the way that whole scenario played out. Even if it didn't work out, I still liked the fact that Butera saw a starter who was pitching well, believed he had at least one more batter in him, let him go after him, and had some success.
And if you're going to give leash to a Nat starter, Griffin's the guy to whom you give leash right now, because he's earned it. You know, nobody else has earned it. Neither Cade Cavalli, nor Jake Irvin, nor Zack Littell, nor Miles Michaelis has pitched well. And so, you know, you look at Griffin, and he hasn't been like lights out, but he's been pretty good. You know, 5 games, all starts, ERA 3.38, whip 120. Like, he's been pretty good. And while he wasn't, you know, great in this game, he wasn't bad. And, so you say, okay, if we're going to try something like this, this is a nice spot in which to try it. And it worked out. And it was good to see that. Griffin has been, I think, everything you could have reasonably hoped for. When you think about this guy had never started a major league regular season game, last 3 seasons in Japan, age 30 season. He's not a young guy, has stuff that isn't really that great. He throws a lot of stuff, but nothing really stands out as being, that special. That the Nats are getting what they're getting out of him. Again, 5 games, all starts, 3.38 ERA. I give him a lot of credit. I think he's doing a nice job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he shouldn't be their best pitcher. That wasn't necessarily the intention all along. But if Cade Cavalli was pitching the way he was supposed to, if, Mackenzie Gore hadn't been traded, or if Zack Littell was off to a little better start after his late signing, you would say to yourself, this is exactly what you'd hope for out of a number 3 or even number 4 starter under the circumstances. And I think it's been great to see. Let's give credit to this organization for scouting and identifying somebody who they felt like obviously was going to come a lot cheaper than most free agent pitchers who had been in the big leagues in recent years. They pay him $5 million, but what they saw in Japan suggested to them that this could translate at the big league level. It's a long way to go. As we keep saying, and I think Griffin himself admits this, he is benefiting from the lack of prior knowledge of him. Every team he's faced so far, everybody has never, I think the only hitter he's faced so far this year who had ever seen him before was Shohei Ohtani, one at bat several years back when Ohtani was with the Angels and Griffin was with, I think, the Royals at that time. Otherwise, everybody's seeing him for the first time. So he knows he's been taking advantage of that, and maybe at some point that will change and the advantage will go over to the hitter's side. But just the sense I get from him, he thinks so much. He has such a game plan. He adjusts along the way. It feels like what he's doing is sustainable. And if that proves to be true, what a great pickup by the Nationals. This is the kind of move for years we're waiting to see them make. Somebody like this that's not a huge signing, but delivers for them in a way that exceeds expectations, or they identified a guy who kind of was slipped through the cracks somewhat. If this all works out, that's a great move by them to bring him in.
And who says the Nats don't have success signing international players, right? Yuneski Maya, Shinosuke Ogasawara. Well, now we have Foster Griffin, an import from Japan, who at least so far is doing really well. And the Nats bullpen in this game did well. 3 Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 3 innings. Gus Varland, a scoreless top of the 7th. Sino Perez did struggle. Top of the 8th, he allowed a run. He gave up a single and 2 walks, 25 pitches, just 12 strikes, 13 balls. But Clayton Beeter, a scoreless top of the 9th with 2 swinging strikeouts. It goes to show you how things can go in sports and in life, right? You push the starter. It does pay off with him getting the out, but the bullpen ends up being good anyway, So like it may well be that even if Butera had pulled Griffin, this just happened to be a good night for the bullpen, and the bullpen would have delivered, whereas in game 1, the bullpen did not deliver. But it is true that as the game was going on and as the game was close for so much of the game, you didn't know what to think in terms of what that final score would be. And you didn't know that the narrative would be Nats win in a blowout. You thought the narrative might be Nats blow another lead or Nats lose a close game. And it ended up becoming a 7-run win for the Nats, but not until late.
Yeah, and it did feel like this one was far from over there for quite a while, both because the offense was not taking full advantage of all the opportunities they had, and you just weren't 100% sure about that bullpen. And against that lineup, as we know, the Braves are deep. They can make you work. I think the Perez 8th inning, there was some weird stuff in that inning, including a throw by Luis Garcia trying to start a 3-6-3 double play. It wound up as a 3-6-3. They only got 1 out because he threw the ball to nobody, and C.J. Abrams happened to be there behind second base and then threw it back to first for the out. So there was some weird stuff that inning, but the fact that Perez did get out of it without letting the Braves get all the way back into it, I think that made a big difference. And then by the time Beeter came into the 9th, they had the lead comfortably in hand because of the tack-on run. So it all worked out in the end, but that's a game that was not nearly as comfortable as the final score would suggest it should have been.
Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. But before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
Stands together at the chest. 2-2 pitch. Pinckney swings. It's a line drive, shallow center, falling quickly. Ward can't get there. It bloops down in front of him. 2 runs will come in. The throw to third is not in time. Adams slides in safely, and the Wings take a 2-0 lead on the Flair RBI single into center from Andrew Pinckney.
Well, happy spring. Window Nation is ready for spring, and Window Nation wants Nats Chat podcast listeners to know that there's no better time to upgrade your home with great Window Nation windows than right now, as Window Nation is offering to Nats Chat podcast listeners the more you buy, the more you save sale. Save up to 50%. Get your windows with 0% interest for 5 years. During uncertain times, one of the best investments that you can make is investing in your home. So visit windownation.com now to book a consultation and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. That's windownation.com and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
Lopez needs a strike. Bases loaded. No outs. The 3-1 pitch. Outside, ball 4. That'll bring in Garcia, and the Nationals lead it 2-0. 10th RBI of the season for Lyle, as Lopez is all over the place here in the first inning.
So game 3 for the Nats against the Braves at Nationals Park Wednesday evening at 6:45. The Nats have Zack Littell as their probable starting pitcher. And then game 4 Thursday afternoon at 1:05, the Nats have Cade Cavalli as their probable starting pitcher. And I think these are going to be 2 really interesting starts. These guys need to be better, Littell and Cavalli, and obviously the opposition is an imposing team in the Braves. How Littell and Cavalli do over these next 2 games, big-time storyline here.
Yeah, in Littell's case, can he just look sharp finally? I don't think there's any excuses anymore. He's this will be his 5th start or 5th appearance because he had that one long relief appearance with the opener. He's built up. There shouldn't be any issue with that. Can he now come out and hit the corners? And you saw last time he had a little too much over the plate that was giving up some damage on it. He's a guy who has to be able to live on the corners. He doesn't have the stuff to get away over the plate, certainly not against the likes of Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies and Matt Olson. He's going to have to be very fine with his command. So, hopefully he can figure something out there. And in Cavalli's case, yeah, let's see. I mean, I actually thought, thinking back on it, that his last start was a real improvement from what we had seen. He threw a ton of pitches, but it was mostly because of foul balls. Now, that might suggest that the stuff wasn't good enough or the location wasn't exactly good enough, but he was throwing strikes. He wasn't walking batters. So if he can keep the ball in the zone and still have the good stuff that he has, I would hope that we see a continuation of what he did last time out. But again, good lineup. You have to be precise with it. And maybe, just maybe, he can be efficient enough to at least give them 5. God forbid, maybe he could even go into the 6th inning. I'm not necessarily counting on that one. But yeah, I agree. I think these are 2 big starts for them, beginning with Littell on Wednesday night.
Yeah, especially, I think, with Littell. Cavalli, at least, you say he's still a developing pitcher. Littell is a veteran. He should be good to go by this point. The results have not been good so far. I get it. The Braves are a good team. This is not an easy matchup. But, it's go time for Littell here. Let's get going here. Let's have your season. Let's be the pitcher who you were these last 2 years. So, the National League East, I did just want to hit on this. The New York Mets now have lost 12 consecutive games. The Philadelphia Phillies now have lost 7 consecutive games. This is by far the worst division in MLB. The only team with a winning record is the Braves. The Nats, with this win on Tuesday evening, tied with the Miami Marlins for 2nd in the NL East at 11-13. What surprises you more, that the Mets are 7-16 or that the Phillies are 8-15? Each team is reeling right now.
I know the easy answer is to say the Mets, but you and I both know with the Mets, anything is possible. And so a collapse of these proportions, which sounds outrageous, deep down, you can't be shocked by it, because if you followed that franchise over any length of time, you know that there's going to be chaos. My prediction with them is at some point, they're going to go on a run and they're going to captivate New York again, and everybody's going to be talking about how they're going to the World Series. And it's either going to turn into one of the great comebacks ever after a terrible April, or it's then only going to get everybody's hopes up so that they can then collapse again at some point down the stretch. That's the New York Met way. It's all or nothing. There's no in between. There are no boring seasons in Flushing. It's always one or the other. So in some ways, I almost feel like the Phillies one is a little more surprising because they're not hitting. Everybody knew they had the pitching, but that lineup is supposed to hit a lot more than they have. There is a lot of negativity right now towards Trey Turner and several others in that lineup. And I think everybody understood that their window of opportunity is not that big, and they're on the back end of it with all the veterans they have, Turner, Harper, Schwarber, and others, Real Muto. And so I almost feel like in their case, they needed to get off to a better start even than the Mets did, because as crazy as the Mets are, they're always going to be in the mix. They're always going to be trying to win to their fullest extent. Whereas the Phillies, I think deep down, everybody understood whether it's this year or next year, like that window is closing. And so I think that one to me is maybe more surprising and more concerning about how this could go from here.
If the Mets do go on a run, you got to wonder if it'll be with a new manager. I mean, Carlos Mendoza, it's actually a minor miracle that he has not yet been fired. But, Tim Shovers might have to update this because maybe that happens in the hours between us recording this and this podcast episode being published. The Mets 7-16 run differential -27. The Phillies 8-15 run differential -45. The Phillies actually have the worst run differential. The Phillies have the worst run differential in MLB as we are recording this at -45. And to your point about the scoring, the Phillies have played 23 games, have scored 80 runs. The Nats 24 games, 136 runs. Compare and contrast the two payrolls, and the Nats have scored 56 more runs than the Phillies have. Spending money guarantees nothing in baseball. We already knew that, but that lesson is being reinforced right now.
And again, that's why I think that one is the bigger concern, because that is a team that is built to win right now. Think about some of the names in that lineup: Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Real Muto. There is some real panic, I think, going on the south side of Philly right now. And again, I understand the Mets sounds more calamitous, but I think the Phillies are the one that could actually be in more serious trouble if they don't figure it out here pretty soon.
This episode of Nats Chat brought to us by the Golf Yards in Ballston, the DMV's new home for elite indoor golf training. The Nats season is just getting started, and so is the DMV's golf season. Make sure that your swing is ready too. Visit thegolfyards.com to secure your spot. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast. And right now, we leave you with an update on the Nats AA affiliate, the Harrisburg Senators, from the voice of the Senators, Frankie Vernouski.
Two-hitter Cayden Wallace, who walloped a home run his last time up. First pitch to him is struck into right center field. That drops. It's going to score at least one. Center fielder Callahan is over to it. A second run scores, and it's a two-run RBI base hit for Cayden Wallace, who is having himself a night.
Frankie Vernouski for the Nats Chat podcast with an update on the Harrisburg Senators. Well, coming into the fourth series of the season with the Altoona Curve in town this April the 21st, the Senators are 11-4 to begin the year, their best start to a season since 2019 when the team that year went 13-2. Lots of the winning for the Senators has come from huge offensive explosions throughout the first 2.5 weeks. The Senators have already scored 10 or more runs in 4 games already this season, averaging about 7 runs scored per game. And it's been from contributions up and down the lineup, but in particular the top 2 in the order. Firstly, with the Nationals' number 7 prospect, Seaver King, who has been red hot over the last week or so in particular, drawing lots of walks. King also with the early Eastern League lead of 17 runs driven in. And then there's Cayden Wallace, who's been on a hot tear at the plate since the middle of August of last season. Wallace just 2 weeks ago was the Eastern League Player of the Week and continued it up with another strong series against the Erie Seawolves last week. And Wallace hitting well over 300 to begin the season as the Senators continue play this week against the Altoona Curve.
First pitch to King is hit well in the air out to right. Tailing away from Callahan. Ranges toward the wall. He leaps up and he won't make the catch. Crashing into the wall. In comes Pineda. Rogers comes in to score. The throw to the plate is not in time to get Pichardo.